Welcome to the Coffee with COVID-19 podcast. My name is Patrick Rolfe, and this is an ongoing media project where we use conversations with some of the leading entrepreneurs and thinkers within the coffee industry to try to understand a sustainable way through living together with our new reality, COVID-19. So welcome back to the second episode of Coffee with COVID-19 here in April. Our goal with this kind of podcast series is to try to investigate and create some kind of foundation of experiences and ideas in regards to how this industry is dealing with COVID-19 the way it's happening to us now. And we want to discuss what's happening right now rather than what's happening in the future and try to give you as broad spectrum of ideas and perspective as we can. Now with us today, for the second time when it comes to podcast here in April, which we're very thankful for, Mr. Tim Wendelboe from Oslo. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
How are you?
Well, under the circumstances, I'm doing very well. I think I had the opportunity to take a vacation this year because of the COVID. So yeah, it's been a good year for me personally, but we'll dig into the business side of it, I guess, during this podcast.
Definitely, we'll do that, and we'll also, if you, depending on how much you want to as well, it's always interesting to hear on the personal side as well. I talked to Sasa from Australia earlier as well in the first episode, and he also had some really interesting remarks on the personal side versus the business side, right? And the kind of stress that comes with this whole process. But let's dig into the first question, and it's very simple. It's just, what was your initial reactions to COVID-19? Like, when did you hear about it? What did you do? Did you do anything? Did you believe it to be a thing, or did you just disregard it?
Well, I remember I heard about it quite early, actually, while I was in, I think I was in Kenya, or I just came from Kenya, and we started hearing about this kind of new kind of swine flu or bird flu kind of virus. And then as I had already booked a couple of trips, both to Colombia and to Central America, I was kind of watching it a little bit from the side, and didn't really think it would be a pandemic for sure. But because I can't really remember the SARS outbreak and how that affected the world. I remember it was a thing, but I was not aware that it was such a serious thing. And but once I was in Central America, that's when we started to see that or people were talking about it being a pandemic, and we were already kind of on our way there, being quite anxious. I was traveling with one of my roasters, Marit, to El Salvador, and so we started to kind of get a little, not paranoid, but we were washing our hands more on the airport and doing stuff like that. And when I came home from that trip, it only took 1 or 2 days, and then the news broke in the Norwegian evening news, that the country had to shut down because of the pandemic. And then I realized how serious it was. And since I just came back from a long trip, I had to be in quarantine while trying to kind of manage my business and see, we had to shut down at least for the first week, and just kind of trying to make sense of it all.
And when you say shut down, was that shut down both in the roastery and in your shop as well, or?
That was what we were a little unsure of, because when the news broke, it was kind of vague if we were able to be open or not, because since we're just a coffee shop, we only serve coffee. We don't serve any food. The government said, any business or any cafe that serves food can be open, but when you don't serve food, you had to shut down. So we shut down the store immediately until we kind of could figure out how we could stay open. And of course, the roastery, we realized, all the offices were closed that we delivered to. All the restaurants were more or less closed that we delivered to. So we realized, there's not going to be any roasting the following week. So I think we roasted just one day, like half a day. And then it was really heavy the first weeks. And then we decided to open the store for selling beans. 2 days a week, which worked really well because a lot of people needed coffee in their home office. And we realized how much more we could sell in the web shop because all of a sudden people ordering a lot in the web shop. So very soon, we were kind of back to roasting a full day a week and selling quite a lot of coffee, but differently. So yeah, it was challenging, I have to say. And I think the most kind of serious thing for me, at least, was that I had to tell a lot of my employees that I didn't have work for them, which, you know, never in my dreams would I have thought that I would ever say that to any of my employees, because I'm a kind of a opportunistic and optimistic guy. So for me, I kind of have always planned for the company to grow organically, not a huge amount of growth, but grow slowly. And so there should always be work for our employees, and we, you know, the only way is to kind of hire more instead of like going the opposite way. So it was quite difficult, but fortunately the Norwegian government were able to give everyone paid salary while they were on leave for I think 6 months. So that really made it a lot easier to tell my employees that, you know, I don't have work for you at the moment. And so I knew that they would at least survive economically, you know.
How many, like, what was the lowest amount of staff that you were down? Like, were you down at basically yourself, or did you have some people still kind of working in the company? Or
well, for a couple of weeks it was just me and Ben.
yeah.
And then we had one more person coming in on the roast day, but well, it's not entirely true, because Christina, our wholesale support, was working from home, but only 50%. And so we had this kind of, some people were working half-time instead of full-time, and some people weren't working at all. But you know, I was working very, very long days here in the roastery with Ben, just to make ends meet. We had to, you know, pack all the wholesale orders, pack all the web shop orders, plan for the roast daily, label all the bags, you know, measure all the batches, answering, you know, we got several hundreds emails every day during the shutdown because people were waiting for their coffee, and the postal service shut down as well. So, you know, after a while we just got more and more emails, and I spent the whole day and the whole evening just answering while trying to manage the business and, you know, helping out. So it was a lot of work, and a lot of angry customers, because we simply couldn't manage to answer everyone very rapidly. You know, some of them didn't get an answer until, you know, 2-3 weeks later, which is a disaster. But, you know, that's what we managed to do. So
yeah, and I think that's certainly been the reality for us in Copenhagen as well. Like it's been interesting how a global pandemic is actually, and this is going to sound weird, but so damaging to your brand to some degree, right? Because all of a sudden the services that you might kind of pride yourself on doing very well, whether that's customer support or logistics or whatever it might be, it just crashes, right? And it's so, especially we saw a lot of roasteries, at least here in Europe, going over to, like, you know, free shipping in times like this. But then you had free shipping cost went up. Plus, a lot of these postals never arrived as well, right? So, you know, it's a question of whether people actually made any kind of money there, right? But
yeah, I know. Until now, we have refunded close to $7,000 or $8,000 to our customers who haven't received their orders.
Yeah.
So
is that counting sending out new coffee to them, or that's basically a refund? No, I said
no. We decided, you know, when the parcel hadn't arrived within 6 weeks, we decided just to give the customer a refund. They might, you know, get the parcel in 2 months. We don't know. But instead of sending a new coffee, which we wouldn't know if it arrived or not, we decided to refund. I think now the postal service is working quite well again. It's still a little bit delayed, but it's working much better at the moment. So now we can, you know, we don't get a lot of those emails anymore.
Yeah, sure. Which is a good thing, right? So we started right in the beginning of the or right before COVID-19 at least hit Oslo. You're out traveling. lucky enough you're not, because I know a lot of people that were actually basically stranded at origin for quite a few weeks or even months, right? Both in Kenya and Panama, I know. You come back, you get the news, you have to basically strip down your business to the very basics. Then you're opening up the store again. Where are you today, and what have been the kind of improvements and continuous challenges from that time to today, basically?
Well, our store is open as normal again now. Of course, the sales is not as it used to be. Normally during summer, we have a lot of tourists in Oslo, and so normally we would almost double our sales in the coffee shop during summer. This summer it was kind of business as usual, I would say. Like the sales were just like it would be in April or March. So we didn't get all those tourists, but we also decided to have shorter opening hours and actually less baristas at work to kind of compensate a little bit for that. But today, now in August, we're back to normal. And of course, the sales is not the same, but at least we are open and we are able to make ends meet, which is, you can't expect your business to make a huge profit every year. Like, that's not realistic. So as long as we're able to be open and make sure our staff has work and are able to please all our regular guests, then fine. And our wholesale is down probably 30-40% at the moment. So, which is, it's okay. The problem is we still have a lot of coffee in stock. Fortunately, the pandemic hit before buying season for us, so we could adjust a little bit with the buying. But I also have commitments to the farmers that we buy from, so I wanted to buy the same volumes, but they understand that I'm not able to do that fully as well. But we try to, at least as much as we could, to buy more or less the same volumes.
And especially in your case, I mean, it should be in everyone's cases, but Tim Wendelboe as a roastery is very much defined by a pretty outstanding green coffee program, right? And a very continuous, transparent commitment to the producers. And I talked with Sasa about that as well, being that he actually has a green coffee importer, right? And that's been one of the major challenges, to make sure that the farmers are also able to make ends meet on their side, right? And from what I hear talking to a lot of importers as well, we see a lot of different structures of purchasing from them as well. So it's pretty clear that importers are buying less than what they've done before. Most likely because there's a huge amount of uncertainty in terms of where we're coming, right? But what's been the kind of, like, what have you been able to do that to make ends meet, both for yourself but also for the farmers that you're working with?
Well, for me it was important to just have the dialogue. I knew that when we're hit with the pandemic, it also means they're hit with the pandemic, and they're gonna have difficulties. Like most of the farmers I buy from in Central America had already finished their harvesting. So for them it was, they just needed to sell the coffee. But for Elias in Colombia, he still needed to pick and process and kind of harvest the coffee. And his problem was getting enough manpower. So for me, it has always been important to have a dialogue with the farmers that we buy from, and kind of have a dialogue about how much they can expect us to buy, and also for what price. So we have actually agreed that I've been buying slightly less from most of them, but just slightly. Let's say from Nacimiento, for instance, I would normally buy 120 bags maybe this year I bought 110 or something. And also with Colombia, I would predict that I was buying 120 bags, and I'll probably buy somewhere between 80 and 100. So we went slightly down on volumes, and also we agreed on a slightly lower price. So for instance, with Nacimiento, I think normally I pay $5.50 per pound, and this year we agreed that I would pay $5, because we've kind of been paying a good price for them for years, and they understand that they also need to help us through this this period, so that we can kind of try to sell them more coffee for a good price. And also the dollar was extremely expensive for compared to the Norwegian crown. So
Yeah.
it's been a very, very challenging year in terms of buying green coffee because, even if you paid the same price to the farmer, it was all of a sudden 20-30% more expensive because of the dollar exchange rate. So, yeah, it's been challenging. But for me, it's important that, especially in these times, that you don't just say goodbye to the farmer and say, I'll be back next year, It's so important to have a dialogue with them and so that they understand the situation from my side and that I can also understand the situation from their side, and then we can agree upon how do we solve this problem together, instead of just being one person saying, I'm canceling all the coffee, see you next year, So I think that's important. And also when I know that I'm not going to buy all the coffee, at least trying to help them get in touch with other buyers that could potentially buy some coffee.
What has been when you say that you're ordering less coffee then, right? Is that because you're unsure of how much volume you're going to sell in the future, or a reflection on the fact that you have overstocked then from the previous season?
It's more of the sales prediction. So at the moment, our kind of production is down with about a ton per month. So we would normally produce around 4 tons a month, and now we're down to like 3 tons a month. So based on that, and I don't know, I've been quite good at kind of projecting what we're going to sell for the last year. So it's never been like we bought way too much coffee. We had a little bit too much from last year, but not much. Like if the pandemic hadn't hit us, we would have probably had a little bit too little coffee. So instead of being tight, we had a little bit too much. So I understood this quite early, so that I decided to actually put some coffees on sale, just to kind of try to get the volumes up in the web shop, and it actually helped quite a lot. So we were able to sell a lot of roasted coffee to consumers for like wholesale price, and because a lot of them had home office, so why shouldn't they enjoy good coffee at home? And thanks for all our customers who ordered the coffee, but it made it much easier to kind of transition into new crop coffees. We're still kind of maybe a month behind, I would say, in terms of what we normally should be in terms of releasing new coffees, but it's okay. The coffees are tasting good, so I'm not worried.
You mentioned before, and basically all the roasters I've been talking to has been saying the same thing, where they see a pretty clear shift where the amount of retail you're selling, especially online then, but of course in your physical store as well, it's just kind of increasing. And is that, how has that been? Has that been a big challenge, or has your company always been kind of able to deal with or going towards online sales anyway in the past?
Yeah, no, for us it's been, we've always been selling a lot online and also in the store especially. So it was just a matter of trying to keep up a little bit. We had to have an extra person in the roastery to just manage to pack all the orders and stuff, which normally we would just do during the day. One of the office guys would do it. So, but I think for us the biggest challenge was that we also changed our website and the kind of back end of the website to a new system just a couple of weeks before the pandemic hit. Okay. And as you probably know from your own website, there's always some issues in the beginning, things not working, perfectly. We know that it will be much better, but it takes normally about a year to kind of figure out all these tiny details that you need to kind of sort out and reprogram. And so we're still in that process, and it's been a nightmare, especially in the beginning, because there was so many bugs that we needed to fix, and some of it weren't in our control. It was, sometimes you have a third-party programmers that are not doing a good job, and so that's actually been the biggest challenge for us. Selling to consumers has always been a big focus for us, and in Norway, a lot of, I would say most people who are interested in coffee are buying, high quality coffee once a week, or, it's not like every now and then it's a regular thing for people. So I know that a lot of our competitors also sell a lot of coffee, both online and in their stores.
Mm. Have you seen when we say increase in terms of online and in store, does that translate also to your other products? Like you had the cup series with Figio, you the AeroPress distributor in Norway, I believe, and a few other products, Wolf, of course. Is that also picking up with the beans as well, or is it mainly beans?
Not proportionally, for sure. But of course, when people buy a bag of coffee and they see a nice cup, they might add that to the order. But no, mainly it's been the coffee that has increased quite a lot. And yeah, it's been very nice. I think we also focused a little bit. I haven't done it in a little while now, but we also try to do like brewing Q&As on Instagram, and especially during the kind of lockdown period where a lot of people were home and they had time to kind of be on Instagram and stuff. But
we saw a lot of Instagram live sessions, just in general, right? And I think that's definitely has gone away a bit now. Hopefully that will come back. I think it's one of those things that I think makes a lot of sense. It makes sense to do more things online in general.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see if that has a carryover. Sasa mentioned in the previous episode that he has had a lot of ideas on changing his whole wholesale structure or communication to be a lot more video based than before as well, right? So some positive things coming out of it as well.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the best things for me is that I have kind of decided to never have physical meetings ever again. Unless it's really necessary. And that's just because a lot of the meetings that I have here in Norway with other Norwegian companies, or it's not necessary to meet in person. It's easy to do the meeting online, and you save so much time. One person doesn't have to travel to the other person's office, and you don't have to go through all the kind of 15-minute chit chat about nothing. So for me, it's normally my weekdays are very, very hectic because I normally travel a lot, and of course now it's different, but I realized I could save a lot of time and be much more efficient if I just kind of say no to meetings and do them online instead.
Is that something you see your sourcing or kind of farm visits being able to translate to as well in the future?
Well, to be honest, I've been kind of planning from day one that, I don't want to travel to origin every single year unless I really have to. And fortunately, I've come to a place where in Colombia and in Honduras and El Salvador, I don't really need to be there for them to do a good job. They know what to do now. We have kind of talked about so many things and implemented so many good routines there. So I don't have to kind of go and babysit what they're doing in order to kind of make sure that they do the processing that I like and so on. So, and I've been going there, it's also a personal thing. Like we have good relations, and you want to kind of visit your friends, and there's a lot of detail when you go to the farm and just hang out with the farmers, and there's a lot of details that you don't talk about during an online meeting or something. But in order to buy coffee, I don't really need to go to origin to get the coffees that I am buying, because I'm buying from the same partners that I have for many years, and they know what I like and how to process the coffees that I like, and they can easily just send samples. And so Colombia is an example now that I haven't been there since February, and Elias is just sending me samples, and I'll buy it based on that, and that's it. And of course we communicate every now and then online, and so if he has any questions, or I have any questions, or probably we'll have to take like a virtual coffee farm tour next year and to talk about stuff. But
yeah, for sure, and which is actually I've seen that coming up on people's agendas also, as in like tech companies are looking into it, because VR is technically becoming a thing as well. So that's something we might very well see. But that would be very cool, and we have a very similar situation. I think like we have a lot of our farmers and producers that are simply sending us videos with updates. And that's also really interesting, right? Obviously, as you say as well, there's some things you can't see unless you're there. But as again, coming back to one of the standouts with Tim Wendelboe as a company is that your relationships with the producers are very solid, are very genuine, and very long term, right? So then you can trust what's behind the scene, and you can focus on what's kind of new for this harvest, and see what's going on, right?
I was actually discussing with Moises and Marisabel when I was there that maybe next year I will not do the trip, basically because we have to start thinking about how much we travel, and the impact it has on the environment. And if it's not 100% necessary for me to go, then yeah, it's nice to go, but I don't probably have to go every year, So I think it just I hope that people will start thinking about how much they travel and if it's really necessary,
Oh, and it's been it's a perfect time for that kind of reflection, right? And also streamlining a lot of processes, both kind of at home and also obviously traveling, right? And I'm curious as to, like, we obviously touched on it a bit, but are you able to do some kind of almost bullet point structures of what's been the biggest challenges, what's been the most important lessons here? Have you actually learned something new? Is Tim Wendelboe as a company going to do something that it hasn't done before COVID-19, or is it kind of business as usual from now on?
I think if anything, COVID-19 kind of reconfirmed that what we are doing is the right thing for our company. So it just made us focus even more on the things that we are focusing on, and that's trying to make the best possible coffee and trying to make it easy for consumers to enjoy that coffee, whether it's at home or in our coffee shop or in a restaurant. And for me, it's not just the trying to have the best possible product, but also the best possible service, and that's been quite critical for our business to be able to sell so much coffee. That people know that even if there's a problem with the shipping, we will help them and take care of it, even though we might reply very late. That's the kind of service that I want to give, and I think because of that, people come back to us and continue buying our coffee. So I know I know that we don't always have the most exciting geishas and anaerobic stuff, and but that's also a lot of our customers don't want that. They just want really sweet, nice, clean coffees and good service, and they want it to be easy to prepare, and so yeah, if anything, it's been reconfirming that what we're doing is it's actually made us focus even more on ourselves as a business, and I'm starting to say no to a lot of other kind of distractions, which has always been my problem. I always say yes to stuff, and then I regret it afterwards because it steals so much of your time that you should be focusing on your own company.
Listen, I think that's been a personal lesson for myself in this as well. I like to believe that we always were able to kind of focus and be relatively straightforward with what we do, but as you say, it's very easy to be distracted, right? And if anything, as you say as well, your first vacation in a long time now during COVID-19, like it's been an opportunity to also reflect on that and kind of come out focusing more on what's the core reason for why people are purchasing from us, and how can we make that stronger rather than doing what everyone else is doing, right? Like on the subject of this anaerobic or funky geisha, that's a good example, right? Because the funny thing is that it's that's becoming so, like, first of all, most of them doesn't taste good. Secondly, it's becoming so common now, right? So I think I'm positive we're going to see a big decline in it for 2021, because those coffees are usually also extremely expensive or unproportionally expensive, right? And I don't think we're moving into a time where that's going to be sustainable to do anymore as well, right? So I'm a strong believer that COVID-19 has, or if we look at pandemics in the past, which I know I said many times the last months, but what it does is that it highlights or it speeds up the processes that are already in place, right? So if your company is moving in a certain direction, it's going to come there faster, right? So if April did really bad things before COVID-19, COVID-19 will showcase that, basically smacking you in the face. Or if you did something really good, COVID-19 will bring that out as well, right? So it's a proof of concept in some way, right? Which to some degree is a good thing to have, even if you perhaps or definitely didn't want it in this kind of format, right?
Yeah.
It's still a challenge, of course. Let's see if we can broaden this, and this is usually kind of a big point when I ask this question. And to some degree, even though I believe very much in focusing on what we're doing now, I think that's the important part. Again, we call this coffee with COVID-19, not coffee post COVID-19, because but this is going to stick around for a while, right? The fastest time historically humans have ever come up with a vaccine is 4.5 years. And even that vaccine wasn't very good, to be fair, right? So it seems like we'll stick with this reality for quite some time. But what do you, not just for Tim Wendelboe, but also just in general, where do you see this whole industry going? Do you see any clear changes? Will it ever be business as usual, or has business fundamentally changed? Both as a roastery, green coffee buyer, and coffee shop?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it will definitely clean out the economically unsustainable businesses. So, it has been maybe too many businesses opening, doing the same thing. And not just in coffee, but also like beer breweries and other stuff. And you see it here in Oslo, restaurants. We had a boom of restaurants opening, and now we're seeing them shut down because their business model wasn't sustainable economically. And especially now during a pandemic where you can have only half the amount of guests because you need to keep a distance and so on. It's even worse. So, yeah, it's hard to say. I think the industry, some of the stuff that I enjoyed the least was like trade shows and all these kind of things. I think the industry has to renew itself. It has been based on a lot of kind of I think at least for me as a roastery owner, you could kind of waste your time traveling and going to trade shows and actually do a lot of stuff that doesn't really help your business at all. And I think that has to change, yeah, I think we need to look at new ways of doing these kind of interactions, whether it's symposiums or we don't really have to have 300 or 13,000 people flying into a city just to look at some espresso machines, And I think those kind of things will have to change, like fairs and stuff like that. But in terms of the trade, I don't think, I'm not sure if recent pandemics or have changed the coffee trade or trade in historically. I don't know, but it's hard to say, actually. I don't really know the answer to it.
Yeah, I think that's a very difficult question, right? And to some degree, change always happens, right? Just in baby steps. So they may not be as prevalent as you want them to be, right? But it's clear that we see some direct changes in that, like some companies have definitely making decisions to do some new things. April started a coffee store, which, to be fair, I would never have done unless COVID-19 happened. Because it's a way for me to connect more with the kind of local industry. But it's obviously a question I think a lot about myself in terms of, should you change anything? Because I think the interesting thing for me when I look back at this, and I had a lot of people I talked to during the crisis and mentors and so on, and the reality is that April never changed anything. As in, I haven't done one single change in the company, apart from the store, as in, I opened a store. But we were so tiny as a company, and I still argue that the smaller the company, probably the better you have navigated this, as in it's not going to hit you that much, right? We buy less coffee, we have fewer employees. April at the time of the quarantine had 3 employees, basically 3 full-time employees, right? And all of those were staffed, all of those had money, all of those had salary. We basically worked as per usual, just separately, right? And we're going out of the pandemic with 6 employees, a store, and some new stuff happening, right? But I'm always very cautious as well to reacting to things that we don't really know where it's going to head, right? I think my maybe concern is that I'm curious as to if this will have a more long-term effect on green coffee quality, because I feel like you and me had talked about a bit about Kenya this season as well, but also a few other origins where I feel the coffee quality, at least in African countries, are not getting better. Let's put it like that. Like I feel that in some cases, that quality has been much higher. Like the increase of quality in Central America has been more evident than in, for example, Kenya or Ethiopia for me. And I'm wondering if we're going to see.
I'm not sure if I agree completely. I understand what you mean, but I think just to have a comment on that, I think especially in Central America, there's a lot of kind of more farmers who are well off. They come from a wealthy family, or they have education, and for them it's easier to do all these kind of crazy coffees and invest in the farm and do stuff that is not necessarily paying off right away, but maybe in the long run will give them huge profits. Whereas for a smallholder farmer in either Colombia or in Africa, it's much more difficult to kind of get to that point. I actually think in Ethiopia that although this year I was a little unlucky with the coffees that I'm buying, because there was just so much rain in the region that I'm buying from that they were unable to process the coffee well. But I saw from the south that the quality was great, and you see now Capo Excellence coming in, government opening for more smallholder farmers to sell directly. That's huge steps in the right direction, I think, and it's only a matter of time before they're gonna outcompete any coffee origin, I think, on quality. Yeah, it might not be. They have so many more farmers than, for instance, in Central America. So, percentage-wise, it might be much less farmers who are going to be at that level, but we will see it for sure, because especially in Ethiopia, where there's such their entrepreneurship is is next to none, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually quite optimistic when it comes to quality there. In Kenya, it's a different story, because there's other kind of wheels in motion there, where real estate is becoming very expensive, and urbanization is a big thing, very close to where the coffee is grown, and so who knows what the future will bring. But I think also there you will see more and more specialized farmers. It's just a matter of time before it happens, I think.
Interesting. So you're in general very positive in terms of the outlook of what we're going to see from especially Ethiopia, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think coffee quality doesn't have to suffer. I don't see any reason why it should suffer from an origin kind of perspective. The only way that I see it suffering is that companies on our side are starting to want to buy cheaper coffees, which probably is happening already. Yes. Well, I know it's happening already. But I also see, like in Norway, I know for a fact that the kind of more premium coffees in the supermarket had a tremendous increase in sales during the lockdown. And I'm talking about like private label brands that are roasted by Solberg and Hansen and Kaffa, which are good roasteries, and they're roasting good quality coffees. And when you buy them in the supermarket, they're reasonably fresh and they're whole beans. And the sales for that just grew like 200-300%.
For sure, we saw the same thing here. I think that's been one of the, like from a financial perspective, that's been one of the big lessons, that put your coffee in a supermarket to some degree, if you're able to, or if that is the path you want to go down, right? Which is maybe a bit different, right? But it's definitely been a segment of the industry that seems to have been doing extremely well. Here in Copenhagen, it's been like supermarkets have been basically calling up roasteries asking, do we have coffee, right? Which have been very interesting, right? But I'm definitely concerned in the sense that, as you kind of touched on as well, that I believe we're going to buy cheaper coffees. I believe it's going to be fewer people that wants to really pay for, let's say, an outstanding quality. And I also believe that quality is already hard to some degree justify financially, as and there's always been a detachment between what your kind of target group evaluates as quality, right? As in, like, you say that this is, let's say, the Caballero Geisha, or like we buy quite a lot of coffee from Geisha Village this season as well, and I'm very interested to see if that kind of coffee is going to be able to move the way that it has in the past, and if these kind of house coffees, none of us really do house espresso blends here at Tim or April, but will that kind of coffee go down in quality? Because for me, that's really interesting, because that's where the real volume is. If you look at roasteries, especially around Europe, right? Which, I mean, time will tell. I have no clue. But it's going to be really interesting to kind of follow and see what comes out of that. Where are we now? So, do we have any last points you want to take before we wrap it up? Is there anything that comes to mind that you want to share?
Yeah, I think one of the most difficult part about the whole pandemic is that I lost a very good friend to Corona, actually.
But, yeah.
Gilberto Barona, the farmer.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I was in El Salvador at his farm when this pandemic kind of broke out, and we were talking about it, and it just feels so unreal that he's gone. So that's been the most difficult thing for me. I also almost lost another friend and farmer that I work with. Thankfully he survived, but it was very close. His whole family, actually. So, we can sit here in our little protected roastery and talk about how everything is actually not going so bad as we thought, but it's not necessarily us that is the problem or has the most impact here. It's a lot of communities where they're not able to kind of have the same kind of protection that we have, and in both economically and health wise. I think that's been the hardest part, and also difficult to kind of really realize as a person how serious this pandemic is until you kind of have someone close to you actually, disappearing when they're.
Sure, I think that's been that has been the main challenge for everyone, and as we talked a bit about before we started this recording, as well as the fact that people are traveling again, right? People are going on vacation at different parts around the world, right? And it is, I mean, as you say, there's a much greater personal social value that is being hurt by this pandemic than any kind of financial business value will ever be hurt, right? Yeah. And it's, I think, very important to understand that there's, people first, and then we deal with business and money later, right? And it's important not to lose track on that, right? Which I think, as you've been saying as well in this episode, where, finding different ways to have meetings, finding different ways to travel, and prioritize people's health and well-being before business, right? I mean, it's if anything has become tremendously clear during this time, it would be that, right? Because it's always going to be so much more important than our financial health, right? Like, a company can deal with not having profit for a few years, or, a company can deal with a lot of things, right? But when we lose some of the best people we have in the industry, I haven't myself been to Gilberto's farm. I've been to Salvador, but not visiting him. But we've been buying his coffees as well, and I mean, that's definitely the more damaging part, right?
Yeah, it's terrible, and it just shows, even if you're a healthy person yourself and you're not worried about getting sick from COVID, there's a lot of other people who are dying from it. So yeah, you can be a potential carrier of the virus and a super spreader or whatever, and it's a matter of respecting other people's lives. For me, that's kind of probably the most important thing to remember in this pandemic, is that you have to take it seriously, even if you don't kind of think that everything is necessary to do. There's a reason why the authorities are, recommending now to use the masks and, washing your hands and keeping a distance, and, it's to protect other people's lives. That's why we do this. It's not to make your life inconvenient, And also to protect smaller businesses from, and also big businesses and people's jobs. So yeah, I think the last thing to kind of remember is that this thing is much bigger than yourself as a person. So you have to kind of take part of it and do as good as you can to help it kind of pass as soon as possible.
Absolutely right. That's part of that's part of why we're sitting here having this conversation as well, right? Whereas we need to share our experience and thoughts and lessons through this, so that again, as you with your story about Gilberto as well, that people hopefully realize the sincerity of this, right? And also take into account the human aspect of it, right? Which again, which I've been victim of early on in this process of forgetting myself, right? Because I haven't, like the first weeks in, or even the first month, going through March to April, it's so hard to relate to it, right? Because to be fair, it's also never happened to us, right? It's the first time in our lifetime we've been through this, and it is really time. I mean, I see that a lot in the coffee competition community, and I've been yelling at my April athletes several times about this as well, actually, because they've been so angry about not having a World Championship going to go to, right? And I mean, that's
tough life.
Utterly, bullshit, right? I mean, complete bullshit. Which we've been saying as well. We actually kicked a few of them out as well because of that. But it's important, right? Because we want to all be sustainable, happy human beings moving into this, right? Moving into the future, and to some degree learning to live with this. I think that's a great note to actually lead this on, which is not the happiest note, but the more sincere and the more kind of real side of this, which is what we need to take with this, right? Like COVID-19 is taking some really, really good people away from us, and it's in all of our interests, both as businesses and people, to make sure that we minimize that number as much as we can, right? Yeah. So focus on that first and get angry over shipping later, right? Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good way to kind of wrap it up. Thank you very much for it, Tim, for your time. I know you're always you're a busy guy, and I respect the fact that you take time to allow me to talk.
All of a sudden, I have a lot of time,
Yeah, exactly. It's I really appreciate it, and I know the people that are going to tune into this are really going to appreciate it as well, for sure.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. This project has been brought to you by April Media, which is an unfiltered view on the coffee industry powered by our Patreon supporters. We would love it if you share these episodes, subscribe to our channels, and if you want to be a part of building this, please join our Patreon. Thank you again.